I love that song, If You're Happy and You Know It, don't you? It just makes me feel like a kid again. I first heard that in Sunday school many, many years ago. A Minneapolis couple decided to go on a long vacation during a really icy winter. And you know how we're having fall right now, and so pretty soon we'll be looking forward to that kind of winter. And so they decided to go to Florida to stay at the same hotel where they had stayed 20 years before on their honeymoon. They couldn't get their flight schedules the same because they both had different jobs, and so he decided to go first. He arrived there on a Thursday, and she was flying in the next day. When he got to the hotel, he discovered that they now had something called the internet. And so in his excitement, he decided to send his wife a love letter. And so he wrote very nicely and carefully to make sure she knew he had arrived. After reading, about the same time that he wrote the love letter, after he hit the send button, a woman in Houston had just returned home from her husband's funeral. And she decided to check her email so that she could get in touch with relatives who she said were going to contact her later. The man who wrote the email to his wife from Florida left out one letter in her email address, which accidentally went to the woman in Houston. The widow, after reading this email, screamed and fainted. Her son came rushing in the door and found his mother on the floor and looked at the computer, and the screen read, "To my loving wife, I've just arrived." The date is November 18th, 2004. They have computers here now, and you're allowed to send emails to your loved ones. I've just arrived and checked in, and I see that everything has been prepared for your arrival tomorrow. Looking forward to seeing you then. Hope your journey is as uneventful as mine was. P.S. Sure is freaking hot down here. Last week, Duke talked about relationships. And some of our relationships we want to go as far as we can with, and we want to go with them when they leave. But he talked about spirituality and relationships. And Duke, your talk last week generated a lot of buzz in the discussion group. A lot of people felt that you were speaking directly to them. Duke said relationships are difficult because of our differences in our language styles, communication skills, upbringing, backgrounds, beliefs. Communication breaks down and relationships are difficult. He said relationships are everything. Every aspect of our lives involves some kind of relationship. In the Course in Miracles, we read that every experience is a relationship. Every situation is a relationship. Relationships don't just come and go, they stay with us forever, even those that we wish we could forget. The well-being of all relationships combined is identical to your own health and well-being. A single relationship that is out of balance affects each part of your life. He also said that to evolve into higher levels of existence through relationships, 3 rules apply. The first one is be the greatest expression of myself that I can be. The second is to truly connect with the other person. And the third is the result of a relationship should further the higher good of myself, the other person, and the universe. Duke summarized it with 4 words. 4 words that we should use in any relationship. I wish you well. He said, you stole from me. You cheated on me. You lied about me. I wish you well. He said, we don't have to like someone in order to wish them well and be at peace in a loving way with the relationship, past or present. So today's lesson, I want to examine 2 questions that Duke left us with. What can we do to fine-tune relationships we love, but are sometimes difficult and may cause us to say things that we wish we hadn't said? What can we do to prevent creating conflict in relationships and yet not lose ourselves in the process, have our own needs met, and maintain our own sense of peace and happiness. Now, the power for the month, I have to digress, is zeal, enthusiasm. Enthusiasm. And in any relationship, you need that. You need enthusiasm, especially if you want the relationship to work. The color vibration, in case you haven't guessed, is orange for the month. And orange sends out a very happy vibration, like Halloween. Don't you just feel happy when you see the color orange? I hope I'm making you all happy because I'm wearing orange today. The disciple is Simon the Canaanite, and the location of this power from the 12 Powers of Man by Charles Fillmore is the back of the neck, the back of the head, the low part of the brain and the back and the upper part of the neck. So when you think someone is being a pain in the neck, you need to call on your power of zeal to give you a greater sense of understanding in relationship. But today, as Duke said, we're starting this 6-week series, and I get to kick it off about relationships. And based on what he said last week, this series called The Art of Living Together, I will focus on rule number 1. To evolve into higher levels of existence through relationships, we must first be the greatest expression of ourselves that we can be. As Aaron's saying, learning to love ourselves is the greatest love of all. And so I've narrowed this down to 2 words from my talk: self-love. Self-love. Scripture tells us in Matthew, the 12th chapter, the 30th through the 31st verses, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength and all your mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. In other words, you must love yourself before you can love anybody. Before you enter in relationship with anybody, you need a good relationship with you. There are 175 references to the word love, loved, or loving in the Bible, which is one of Unity's textbooks. I chose this one from the scripture that relates to loving ourselves. In order to be successful in any relationship, you got to start with you. Just as we sing at the end of every service, let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be love on earth, and let it begin with me. Now, to give you a demonstration, if you've ever flown in an airplane, of modern-day self-love, self-preservation, the flight attendant starts out before the flight takes off with some basic instructions. They tell you where all the exit doors are and the lights that are going to appear, and there's the wing and this and that, right? But the most important thing they say is, in the unlikely event of a loss of cabin pressure or an emergency situation, oxygen masks will appear overhead. And then they tell you that if you're seated next to a small child or another person needing assistance, secure your own oxygen mask first before you assist anybody else. That's called self-love. Secure your relationship with who you are before you can be in relationship with anyone. We all have some form of self-love issues. Anybody in here, raise your hand if you do not have, never have had, don't expect to have any issues with loving yourself. I was hoping there would be somebody. I'm certainly not the one. But I'm going to give you a sample list, and I want you to go down the list in your mind as I'm calling these things out and think of which ones of these might apply to you. You criticize yourself constantly. You believe that you are not good enough. You find it hard to believe in yourself. You often put your own needs last. When you look in the mirror, all you notice are your flaws, your imperfections, your faults. You are constantly worrying about something. You have a negative attitude much of the time. You obsess over what other people think about you. You cannot accept or believe the compliments you receive. You downplay your own gifts, talents, and abilities. You constantly crave the approval of others. You set aside your own desires in order to please someone else. If you identify with at least 4 of these, psychologists say you have some serious self-loving to do. All this talk about goal setting and how to be successful and attracting more abundance is best set aside until you have accessed this loving reservoir within yourself. Now, love takes practice, especially self-love. It's easier to love someone else sometimes than it is to love ourselves. The more you practice, the greater your ability to love and be compassionate will be. Now, you may have already accumulated 1,001 reasons why you do not deserve to love yourself. The good news, it's possible to change what you think and what you feel. Love is the key. So if you want more happiness, start with practicing having more love for yourself. Those people who didn't clap, they're happy and they don't know it, they need to start with more love. More love. I like that song. I know I don't look the part by some people's standards, but trust me, there's a country girl in here. My father wore cowboy boots and cowboy hats every day. Very rarely did I see him without his cowboy boots and cowboy hats. I mentioned to Sharon Kelly earlier that he was a cowboy. She said, no, he was a cowbro. So he was a cowbro. He was from a big ranch in Louisiana, and he was a cowbro. So the song that comes to mind when I think about how we don't love ourselves is one you're probably familiar with. Looking for love in all the wrong places. Looking for love in too many faces. Right? Looking through eyes to see if there are traces of what I'm dreaming of. Now that I've found a friend and a lover, I'm glad that I have discovered looking for love. It's in me. That's the way I would write that country western song. Looking for love. There once was a wise woman walking through the forest when she found a stone in a stream. It was brilliant. It caught her eyes. It was amazing. It must be precious. So she placed the stone in her bag. The next day, the wise woman set out on another trip, and she came across a hungry traveler who asked her for some food. When she opened her bag, he noticed the stone, and he noticed how brilliant it was, and he said, "Can I have that?" And having a big heart and a loving consciousness, she immediately gave it to him, and he went on his way. The next day, the traveler, who rejoiced about his find and knew it was worth some money, and said to himself, "I'll no longer be hungry again. I'm going to be rich. This is worth a lot of money." He had a change of heart. And he went searching for this woman, and he found her as she was helping another beggar, giving him some bread from her bag. And when he approached her, he says, "I've been thinking, I know how valuable this stone is, but I give it back to you in hope that you can give me something more precious. Give me what you have within you that enabled you to give me the stone. Give me what you have within you that enabled me to give you the stone." You see, you can be compassionate in measure to how much you love yourself. It is self-love that enables you to do for others as you would have them do unto you. So never underestimate the attracting power of self-love. Mary Dunbar said, "We are each gifted in a unique and important way. It's our privilege and our adventure to discover our own special light." In the movie The Help, how many of you saw the movie The Help? Came out a couple of years ago. Very good movie. Do you remember the scene where the little girl had been chastised by her mother, had been spanked and scolded, and her mother, she was a very little girl, maybe 3 or 4, and her nanny, played by Viola Davis, consoled her. She had her sit on her lap. She says, "You is kind, you is smart, you is important." And then she had the little girl look in her eyes through her tears of being hurt by her mother and say it back to her in the I am. "I am kind, I am smart, I am important." What she was saying to her is, love yourself. She was teaching this very little girl the consciousness of self-love. No matter how many disapprovals you get from people who you believe should love you, the first law is to love yourself, and then love your neighbor as yourself. In Self-Love Secrets, How to Love Yourself Unconditionally, Evelyn Lim shows how we can manifest abundance with self-love. Now, we just started the Prosperity Plus class on Saturday, and we're talking about manifesting abundance in every area of our life. And by the way, if you're interested, we have one more sign-up day. You can come on this coming Saturday, and that'll be it. We'll close the doors after that. In these Self-Love Secrets, she says, when we find ourselves constantly complaining, we're caught too much in the having and exuding the vibration of not having. When we find ourselves constantly complaining, we are caught too much in this concept of having, and we're caught up in this vibration of not having. Changing our external reality starts with working on the self. We need to realize the vibration of abundance is love. Love is the ability to create. That's what makes us co-creators. As Unity's second principle says, co-creators. We create our reality through the way we choose to think, the way we choose to feel, and the way we choose to believe. So if you want to attract wonderful relationships, stop looking for love in all the wrong places and start looking within yourself. So how do we begin to love ourselves? Well, first you start with your own self-talk, the stuff that other people can't hear that's always going on in your head. You start there. When you hear yourself saying, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not deserving, flip the script. I am enough. I am enough. Do the mirror test. I sometimes do this. Stand naked in front of the mirror. Now, it can be kind of scary at first. Stand naked in front of the mirror and face yourself, face your truth, and do an examination of yourself. Wherever you see flaws, I am beautiful. I am graceful. I am perfect. As Scripture says, I am fearfully and wondrously made in the image and likeness of the one presence and one power active in my life and the universe. So when you see imperfections, just like we did in the song, show your teeth and look at that radiant smile. There can be nothing imperfect about that. Make up your mind to love yourself. Accept that you are responsible for the outcomes of your experience. So change your words. As Norman Vincent Peale once said, if you change your thoughts, you will change your world. But it takes practice. You might have to write some things down, some positive statements about yourself. Stick them on the mirror. Get some sticky notes. Put them on the refrigerator. You might have to journal a little bit. It's going to take some effort to shift that paradigm. But love yourself no matter what. And stay in the present moment. It's easy to look back and go, if I should have, would have, could have. And then we start that same cycle of guilt and shame and blame and not loving ourselves. But be here now. Look at who you are today. Look at where you have come from and how you arrived to where you are by loving yourself. When we affirm the truth of ourselves with gratitude and enthusiasm, we act it out. Act enthusiastic and you'll be enthusiastic. When you say these words, I am healthy, I am prosperous, I am loving, I am love in expression, be enthusiastic about it. Stand in front of that mirror and yell at yourself, I am enough, I am powerful, I am loving, I am beautiful. And don't take anybody else's word for it. You love yourself. I love and accept myself exactly as I am. Can I get you to say that with me? I love and accept myself exactly as I am. So the secret to the art of living together, this 6-week series, in harmony, is first of all to love yourself. Then you'll find it easy to love your neighbor as yourself. The 13th century Sufi poet Rumi said, your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find it in all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. Buddha said, you yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, desire love and affection from yourself. Learning to love yourself is the greatest gift of all. On the front of your bulletin, you'll find part of Desiderata by Max Ehrmann. Last week, Duke had the first portion, Go Placidly Amid the Noise and Haste. And this I want to share with you, because I think this speaks volumes for how to learn to love yourself. Where do you start? Speak your truth quietly and clearly. And listen to others, even the dull and ignorant, they too have their story. And whatever labors and aspirations in the noisy confusion of life may be, keep peace in your soul. With all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Be cheerful, strive to be happy. When we accept ourselves without harsh judgment and express appreciation for our individuality, we find it is easy to accept others without prejudice and experience a sense of unity with all people. Then we know the power of self-love, and we will have mastered the art of living together in harmony with ourselves, our lives, and all others, with a loving mind, a loving heart, and a loving spirit. Join me in affirming again, I love and accept myself exactly as I am. Together, I love and accept myself exactly as I am. And now I invite you to hold that in your consciousness as we move into meditation.